Hello, welcome back. My name's Trent. I'm the Weftrite, and welcome to my tiny fiber studio here in the mountains of Western North Carolina. So I've been holding out on you. I mentioned it slightly in a video one time, but last summer, in July, actually around this time, I bought a computerized Dobby Loom from AVL. It was at a very good price, and the story behind it was really precious. A woman who was well known in the weaving community. I haven't talked to her family about this, so I'm not going to mention her name. But she had taught for years. She had articles featured in Shuttle Spindle Die Pot. So she was a really good weaver. And she had passed away, and her husband, with the help of some friends, was selling her loom equipment, and there were a few issues with it, but I ended up getting it working. This was the first thing I wove on. It was just a sampler of point twill, and then my first project was this scarf for my mother, which ended up really beautiful. I wove it on 18 shafts, 16 for the pattern and 2 for the selvages, and it's not my favorite loom to weave on, I'll be honest with you, because I'm so large, and the Workshop Dobby Loom, especially the 16-inch, which is what I got, was very small. But one thing I knew I wanted to do was to give it a sectional warp beam. I love beaming sectionally. Most of the warps I do are solid colors or simple stripes, so it's very efficient and quick. And the AVL Workshop Dobby Loom had holes drilled for the separators for the different sections in a sectional beam, and you could buy them, and they sold them in a set for either 2-inch, or you buy 2 sets and make 1-inch sections. If all this doesn't make any sense and you're confused about what sectional warping is, see my video. I'll link there and down below about sectional warping. But essentially, I looked at the price and looked at the time it was going to take to get it to me, and I said, you know what, I bet I could make my own sectional rake, or comb as it's called. And so I went about doing exactly that, and I thought you may want to see how I made the different section dividers for my sectional beam. So stay tuned, and you'll see pretty quickly how I was able to convert a standard beam into a sectional beam. All right, so we have our 1/8-inch rod, which fits perfectly into the AVL Workshop Dobby Loom. I'm fairly certain that their larger Dobby Looms would be bigger. And I did not spring for the stainless steel just because it's so expensive. So this steel has a slight coating of oil on it to prevent it from rusting. My studio is in an air-conditioned, low humidity room, so I'm not that worried about rust. I have plenty of carbon steel reeds that have no problem. So I'm going to clean that with just some 91% isopropyl alcohol, and as you see, it really is pretty gross. And then once that's happened, you have to do that first, because our next step is going to be to measure and mark. So I'm going to go ahead and that didn't work. Lock my tape measure. Why is that not working? There we go. In fact, I'm going to lock it even longer so it's not in the way. I don't know if you could see that. So let me do it a little bit shorter, and we'll do it this way. So I want 7 inches. I've tested this already. This works out pretty well for my purposes. I have decided that I don't want to do the maximum length that I can fit behind the breast beam, or the cloth beam, forgive me. So I've decided to do it at a length that will accommodate if I get a different tension box at some point. Maybe it won't be in the way of that. But yeah, I'm marking 7 inches. I think this is going to leave me a little short. No, it's actually perfect. So let me actually get this sticky tag off of here, and I've got to actually wipe that down again because I didn't clean underneath the tag. All right, now we have our bolt cutters. These are really tough to open. You have to be pretty strong to maneuver these, but the best way is to set them on a flat surface. Put the mark right in the jaws and then compress. All right, so you'll see I'll open up the jaws just enough to get the wire in there, and then I'll find my mark. On this 1/8 inch rod, it's really not too difficult to do it even at the tip. If you're doing a thicker rod, which I believe a lot of sectional beams might need, then you may want to put the rod a little further in toward the middle. That will maximize the force and minimize the effort for a thicker piece of steel. As I said, this 1/8 inch steel is pretty easy to maneuver. I'm doing this assembly line style. That's why I marked everything at once, because that saves time. This does leave a slight burr on the edge, but honestly I'm not that worried about it because it's going to be down inside the comb for the sectional beam. Now, I should have bought just enough to make this work, so I'm not counting. Unlike a lot of sectional beams, the AVL Dobby Loom has a 3 comb system. Most have 4, so I actually don't have to cut as many hoops for that. All right, so out of one full section, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I got 10 pieces of metal, so that should equal 50 hoops. All right, the final thing I'm going to do is mark the halfway point, which is 3.5 inches on all of my pieces. This is just going to help me in the bending process. I can line them up together. And do several at once. Don't want to be greedy and do too many. So now I can line them up. Bunch of them. And use one to act as a stop. Got one that's a little bit longer, and that's going to be fine. I can mark the halfway point on all of them very quickly. If you're doing this method where you're going to cut more than one at once, I recommend using the same template piece over and over again. That way you are not increasing or decreasing subtly with each one you do. And this is just a rough guide. It doesn't have to be exact. And that's it done. We'll see you in the loom room. Now, the first time I tried to bend a hoop, I used the handle on my loom. I took the center and simply bent it a little bit. And then once that bend starts, you can bend it the rest of the way. It did leave some marks on the handle, so I tried to find a better solution. So I have this wire rack shelving in my loom studio, and this is just about the same measurement as that dowel. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try to center my hole or my hoop, bend it, and then compress it together a little bit. That one's a really good one. So I'm going to try that again. Going to put my center mark behind the post. I like this better than the other method because I also don't have to bend over as far. That one's a little uneven, but it'll work. These are not going to be as perfect as the ones you buy, obviously. I'm sure they have a jig specifically meant for bending these. Alright, let's begin putting in the hoops. I only need the 16-inch width. There are 2 pegs on the outside of that I don't think I will ever need. So this one's a little bit uneven. So I put the longer end in first, and then squeeze in the shorter end. A lot of them are uneven. They're very hard to bend perfectly, but they all tend to work out pretty well. The way I bend them is I want to make sure that they're slightly wider than the holes that are going in it. That way the tension holds them in place so they don't fall out. Super quick and easy. This one is way different. I don't know if you can see. We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, I'll trim down that end, and it'll just be, an 1/8 of an inch shorter, and that's going to be fine. Don't plan on doing huge warps on this. Maybe about 20 yards. There you go. It worked fine, even with that big difference. Now, of course, you could do 2-inch sections, which would save you a lot of money and time. But I like doing 1-inch sections because I have to wind less bobbins. probably be ideal to do this from behind the loom, but in my room I don't have the space for that. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14 sections. So if I wanted to go to the full 16-inch width, I would add 2 more sections, but I don't need that right now for the project I need, and there's no reason to have extra weight on the beam. And there we go. She's ready to warp. Now, obviously, if you don't have the holes pre-drilled in your beam to do this, you would need to do that yourself and create some little bars. Most modern loom companies sell a sectional kit. Even Leclerc looms, which are very, very old, you can get sectional kits for them. But if you have a little no-name loom, or you have the energy and knowledge to build your own, it's really not that challenging. Another way that people make sectional beams is just with simple wooden dowels. You could do that as well. Though personally, I like the rounded wire ones because the threads don't tend to stick on top of them, and they're a little bit thinner than the dowels. But either way, this is something you can totally do. I did it with only stuff from my local hardware store. I didn't order anything fancy. And are they perfect? No. Did they work really well for the scarf project, which I showed earlier? Yep, it worked great. So that's it for today. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying dry. It's been very, very wet where I am. I know it's been very, very hot all over the world though. So stay safe, and we'll see you next time.